before we bring John in,
I didn't get it.
I'm really annoyed today. I have a shirt on that I washed, but I must have left it in there too long, and it has that musty smell. Like it smells like I'm like dirty. Like,
is that your excuse for smelling dirty?
I was just explaining. I am like, when I do my laundry, I'll wash it. It's like a commissary. I just wash all my clothes at once and dry it all at once, and then I put it all together. So I can't detect which was in the stinky pile because it's all in one pile. But I will wash clean clothes again if I think they sat in my closet too long. I'm just really like.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that unless you have something in your closet that diffuses smell.
So, like, I'm like, all right, this sat too long. It must smell a little musty. I have this shirt on today, and I can smell that it was in the washer too long.
You're all self-conscious about it?
Oh, my God. I just keep smelling it.
Don't you have a T-shirt somewhere that you can change into? All right, here's what you do. This is yours, right?
Yeah.
So you go into the bathroom.
No, this is smelly by association now.
You're screwed.
I wore it.
Stay away from me. Now I'm concerned.
It doesn't smell like it's not like when a guy has BO. No, it's not like a BO smell. It's more of like just like musty. You know that musty smell?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't necessarily buy your reasoning as why your shirt smells that way.
It just smells. I don't know. Because I didn't wash it. I mean, I washed it, but I let it sit too long. That's why it smells. But there's a whole load of my clothes infiltrated with clean clothes somewhere that were all washed, but they sat too long.
That was
the
the
difference.
difference.
Can't figure out which ones they are because they're mixed in with a good, fresh-smelling set.
Okay. I'm not buying it. It's happened to me before, but you're talking like months of neglect in a closet, not a week's worth of neglect. That's the difference.
Let's bring John in to the conversation here. The Eagles are getting ready for the Cowboys. And, John, we've got bulletin board material. Do we? Do we really have bulletin board material? Is Kamu giving the Cowboys bulletin board material? He says they're the Cowboys. They always choke, and we're going to go down there and we're going to choke them out.
I think we got some bulletin board material from Mike Gill. Just throw some Downy in there. Fixes everything. It'll be fine.
His laundering practices, to me, raise some questions.
Yeah, those are rookie mistakes, Mike. Just throw a little bit of Downy. It cleans everything.
Well, this happened after the fact. Like, it was after the fact. Like, I took the stuff out, and I folded it all, and I was like, there's a really musty smell to this shirt. And, like, this one slipped through the cracks. Like, I re-washed all the rest of them, but this one slipped through.
All right. Well, what I'm trying to say is the fabric softener takes care of that.
Gotcha.
So you throw that in with the laundry detergent. But as far as the Eagles bulletin board material, I mean, I don't know. I think that stuff is a little bit overrated. Certainly the Cowboys are going to play it up. They already have from down there. But you got to – I mean, Kamu's 24 years old. He's not like – he didn't live through Tom Landry. He didn't live through Jimmy Johnson and the triplets. I think the Cowboys have won maybe 3 playoff games since he's been alive. So from his perspective, they kind of always choke. But Doug Peterson didn't talk today. He had his conference call with the Dallas area media, and they asked him about it. He called it unfortunate. So he'd probably prefer not to have that out there. But I think once the ball is kicked off, that'll be forgotten pretty quickly.
Yeah, and the Eagles are in a position where, look, I get it. He said something. It's kind of all right. It's out there now, but they're in no position, right, to be kind of calling anybody out with where they are right now.
No, I don't think either of these teams are. I think when we talk about bulletin board material in general, I think it is more played up by the fans, particularly in some of the media, and more than the players, who kind of have confidence just by the nature of who they are as professional athletes. You kind of want to come in with that little bit of swagger, whatever you want to call it. And then after the fact, it's kind of played up. So if you think about the most famous would be Joe Namath guaranteeing a win. Well, if he loses, nobody's talking about that many years later. You talk about NFL Films always plays that clip of when the Eagles lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. Belichick was showing his players, look, the Eagles are planning the victory parade, showing them the plans. When, the reality of that is if you're sitting in that type of situation, you better make plans. And that's how you go about logistics. That's all that was. So I think it's played up after the fact. If the Eagles lose this game, people are going to be probably all over Kamu.
Yeah, and John, I think that's the issue that I have with it, which is I look at it like Kamu did not wake up to think he's going to be some fire starter and he's going to take over the spotlight and make this about trash talk. This was not Floyd Mayweather and Conor McGregor. But at the same time, I think, and we may disagree a little on this, but I think that there are too many examples of players telling me when I was doing what you were doing and others and to your credit, after the fact, but still remembering it. Yeah, we did go up to Dak Prescott and said, screw this linebacker. He doesn't know what the hell he's talking. We got this for you. And maybe, just maybe, as we've seen, and these guys are telling us and we take it on their face value, that's enough just to be a little more focused or be a little more up. Not the difference maker, but just a little more than just their average, I'm ready to play this football game.
Well, and I think that's why Doug called it unfortunate. He'd prefer that it didn't happen. I don't think there's any question about that. And I think, the second part of it, I think it was more of a joke.
Yes.
I mean, Eitan, you're
yes
a TV guy as well. That was a sort of a TV question because it's Dallas week. If you're in these locker rooms, you have the difference between the TV questions and the reporter questions, and they're different because you're talking about a different audience, and it was tried to be played up, and yeah, he is a young guy, and he took the bait a little bit, and it was a joke. It wasn't anything serious, but you see what happens in those types of situations.
So now, when you look at past the comments itself, I think that, and we could start with that position specifically, the injuries to both hands that we know with Bradham and Kamu as well. But health-wise, starting on defense, any new changes over the last 12 hours as far as, maybe we will see Jalen Mills. Maybe we will see a player that we thought we would not.
No, we're definitely not going to see Jalen Mills. He's not going to play. Avonte Maddox is closer. He's listed as day-to-day by Doug, but he did not practice again. I would be very surprised if he played as well. I think the bigger issue is Michael Bennett, who didn't practice today. Now, I think they're just trying to give a veteran, very similar to Jason Peters on the offensive side of the ball, got dinged up at the end of the game. I think they're trying to rest him and trying to make sure they're completely healthy for this game. So I think both of those guys are going to play. I don't think you're going to see Avonte Maddox. You're not going to see Jalen Mills. You're not going to see Jordan Hicks. So the key guys, that's the way it's trending right now.
Yeah, and, one of the things you wrote about Rasul Douglas today, John, that he's gaining some more confidence. I can imagine that's a lot of the guys in the secondary now going on like their fourth week of getting regular reps.
Yeah, I mean, that helps. Rasul hasn't been great in coverage, but he made that great play when the Redskins had that throwback trick play. They were desperate at the time, but it was going to work. And Trent Williams was out in front. And Rasul Douglas was the only guy near him that had an opportunity to make a play. Either it was going to go for 30, 40 yards minimum. It might have went to the house. That's how much open space Chris Thompson had. And he kind of knifed right through a really, really good player, made a great tackle. And that's the kind of play that can sort of bolster the confidence of a young player. And you hope it does, because the Eagles need Rasul Douglas. They need Sidney Jones. They showed they're a big improvement over Chandon Sullivan and Devontae Ballsby. But that said, they haven't proven to be good enough. And this is it. I mean, this is the game. If the Eagles lose this game, you can forget about the playoffs for all intents and purposes. I mean, the probabilities crash if they lose this game. If they win the game, it's not, by no means guarantees anything, but all of a sudden those probabilities shoot to over 50%, and you're in position to do things in the final 3 weeks of the season. But if they lose this game, it's essentially over for them.
Yeah, I would agree. And even if they win, as you just kind of chronicled, it doesn't guarantee them. It doesn't make me feel warm and fuzzy. I could say that. I mean, because you still, in my opinion, John, you still need to find a way to beat either the Rams or the Texans, right? You got to win one of those two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And obviously, you would center in more on the Texans game because it's here. And the Rams are just a better team overall. But we've seen everybody. I mean, the Rams haven't been playing as well recently that they were earlier in the year, haven't been as explosive, quite as explosive. So we've seen upsets in this league in the past, but I think the more likely path would be getting the Texans here. And you can look at two things. The Texans are red hot, obviously, after starting 0-3 and running off all the wins. But I think we look at Houston and say, look, at some point that team's going to lose again. So why not in Philadelphia against the Eagles? I think if they win this game, I think you're set up to potentially beat
lost to the Giants at home.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is difficult to win games in this league. Now, it becomes a little bit easier as the schedule starts to get further in the season. And I always say early in the season, when you look at your schedule and you kind of know a team's going to be bad because they might not have that much talent, might have some issues at the quarterback position, you never want to play them early because nobody knows how bad they are early. And then as the season wears on, teams start giving up and you see some maybe more blowouts and maybe more games you can say it's pretty definitive one team's going to win over another. That tends to be the way every NFL season goes. But these two teams, the Cowboys and Eagles, are obviously playing their best football right now, both of them. Cowboys 4 straight, Eagles 2 straight consecutive wins for the first time this year for the Eagles. So I think it's going to be a tight game.
Hey,
John.
Real quick. We talked about this in the first hour of the show, Eitan and I, about the Eagles' mentality maybe changing behind closed doors in terms of, look, the first month of the season you had a lot of distractions. Foles, Wentz, when is he going to start? You win the Super Bowl. Maybe they weren't really ready to be the defending Super Bowl champions, but they've persevered and they've got to this point still in it. Do you sense more swagger and more of that, hey, here we are, we got through all that, we can beat Dallas, the Rams, and the Texans? Because you know what? Last year, if we were talking about the Texans and the Rams as good as they were on your schedule, they end up beating them. They went through everybody that was on the schedule. It didn't matter who you were, when they played them, where they were. They were at L.A. They went out to L.A. and beat that Rams team last year. And a lot of people thought after the Seattle game, oh, man, you lost to Seattle, this thing's falling apart. And they went out there and beat the Rams. So that inner confidence, maybe they have it back?
I don't think it's to the degree of last year. I don't see that at all. I don't see how it could be. I mean, let's be honest. That team went 16-3, and this team's already lost 6 games, and and as I said, just won consecutive games for the first time. So, no, I don't think they're back to that, but they have been winning, and that's what winning does in this league. It boosts your confidence, so they are feeling a little bit better about themselves. They certainly think they can beat Dallas. Obviously, they're very familiar with them. If they get that game and then you go out to the Rams and you kind of take the temperature then, because obviously they would be a significant underdog, no one would be expecting them to win that game. And that's, in a lot of ways, that's when the Eagles have been at their best, when Doug uses the us versus them mentality. But you got to beat Dallas for any of that to matter. And that, to me, has been more of the way it's been the past couple weeks. They know they dug themselves a hole, so it's been about 1 week at a time, and you can't really even think about the Los Angeles Rams yet because, as I mentioned, that game is virtually meaningless if you don't win this one.
Yeah, they really haven't had, and I know this is going to sound a little crazy, but they really haven't had that signature underdog-type win for me to put stock in they can turn this around and go back into believing and overcome talent issues, not necessarily mental or distraction issues. They haven't had the Eagles are a 4.5, 5-point underdog, and they've come out and they've beat Team X this year.
Well, they haven't been underdogs. I think they were underdogs once, and that was New Orleans. And they've been favored in every other game.
Right. Well, Vegas loves playing us like toys. They know that. Yeah. They know we'll bet on anything if it's pro Philadelphia.
Yeah, their best win this year is that game against the Colts. Right, John?
In hindsight, maybe because of how Indianapolis has been playing recently, but the Colts were struggling at that point.
But I'm saying, like, looking back, the best win they have all year is beating a 6-6 Colts team. And by the way, holding a offense that had been scoring pretty much in the 30s consistently to 16 or 19 points in that game.
Yeah, and that was, you could look at it, but that was very early in the season. And
right after that Eagle game, the Colts kind of found their way a little bit.
Yeah, and Andrew Luck wasn't completely healthy. You remember when they threw the Hail Mary at the end of the game? He took Andrew Luck out and put in Jacoby Brissett because he couldn't throw the ball that far. So he wasn't completely healthy at that stage. I think that played into it. But, the Eagles, I talk about it with Mike all the time. The Eagles weren't really underdogs last season, and they played that up. It doesn't matter. All the underdog talk was related to Nick Foles and nothing else. Everybody knew they had a good team.
But they don't this year, though.
No, but Doug Peterson was able to play it up, and that's what you sort of play up as a coach what works, I think. And it doesn't matter what works outside the building. It matters what works inside the building.
Yeah, but
so I think they've always, and they continue, and I think I've said it a lot. I think it goes back to Doug's history as a player and being a lightly regarded backup quarterback who lasted for 13 years. He's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, and he always thinks it's us versus them. It doesn't necessarily mean it is.
No, and I agree that it isn't always the case, but I wonder if at some point you still need to attach the talent where, you can always – you can be a great motivator, and you can get the smallest, littlest guy, weakest guy on the field and build him up to think that he's Lawrence Taylor. But at some point, he's going to run into a brick wall that's an offensive lineman, something like that. And that's what I wonder where, and I don't know, but I wonder what side of that line is this year's Eagles team on. And I don't know if I have enough so far to give me hope and confidence that it's not an issue of talent.
Well, I think you saw a lot of guys underachieving. I think you saw a lot of guys having career years last year that haven't been able to back them up. I think if you're looking for the positive, it starts with the offensive line, getting a little bit healthier, starting to dominate again, and that's helpful. Jason Peters excluded from that since he's banged up again, but I do think he's going to play. But Lane Johnson has all of a sudden turned into Lane Johnson again, and Jason Kelsey, we saw that block, is the best center in football all of a sudden again. So I think it starts there. Golden Tate coming in, they finally figure out a way, even if it was sort of extending plays and it wasn't actual scripted plays for him. He's been able to get open against Washington, 7 out of 7 targets, a touchdown, a 2-point conversion. All of a sudden, you add him to the mix with Ertz and Jeffrey. You probably have enough playmakers. You have Josh Adams developing. So that's all the good stuff. The bad stuff is I think what I said, and I said this to Mike way back in the summer, maybe even the spring, about that career year stuff. I mean, when you have special seasons, that's what happens. Guys have career years. And it's very, very unlikely that everybody's going to be able to repeat those years. And I think a lot of guys haven't, starting with Nelson Aguilar, and at least, you talk about levels. You talk about a guy like Jason Kelsey, who's still the best center in football, but he was just better last year than this year. And part of that is due to injuries. Same with Lane Johnson. He's the best right tackle in football. Last year, he might be one of the best 5 this year. Still really good, but not as good. And you see that up and down the roster on both sides of the football.
John McMullen will have a plethora of information for tomorrow's game or preview. Plus tonight, it's Mosher, McMullen, and Krause live from the Landmark Americana, a great establishment out in Glassboro, about 45 minutes from where we are right now here at Chickies and Pete's in Atlantic City. So check that show out tonight from 6 to 8. And, of course, McMullen is back tomorrow. He'll give you his pick and more on this Eagles-Dallas week. Danny White on the show tomorrow, former great Cowboy great. How about that?
There you go.
He was a
Danny White. And that's
guy.
the glory days.
Compass
Trust me,
Media.
Kamu Grugier-Hill does not know who Danny White is.
What did I say?
Play-by-play guy.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
I thought
He said he's a great play-by-play guy.
I think he does. I think he actually did some play-by-play.
He might have, but he's doing the.
That's Brad Sham.
Well, Brad Sham is the radio guy for the.
I thought Danny
White
TV.
does it on Compass.
Right.
He's the Dallas has their own national radio syndicate. Compass Media.
That's absurd, by the way.
Well, Danny White is the color analyst for Compass Media's coverage of Dallas. Brett Musburger does Raider games. He's the national Raider guy.
And Danny White was a great punter. Or he was
I'll ask him that tomorrow.
Good quarterback.
Well, isn't he listed as quarterback/punter?
Oh, sure. He was a tremendous punter before he took over for Roger Staubach.
Best punter you ever saw was in person.
In person? Oh, that's a good question. I don't pay
Roby?
attention to. I don't know. I never saw Ray Guy. I default to him. But
Camp Johnston has a booming leg.
I can tell you the best kicker, Justin Tucker. But all punters are a waste of time.
More waste than a kicker?
Oh, yeah. Kickers are meaningful.
Get rid of anybody that touches the ball with their foot.
I need a good coffin corner guy.
Coffin corner.
All right, John. Take care, man.
See you, John.
All right, see you guys.
At JF McMullen on Twitter.